Stu Schafer. Stu is a professor and a farmer. His academic vita includes a BA in English and Environmental Studies, an MA in Sociology, and a PhD in Sociology. His non-academic work experience ranges from farmhand to oil-filled roughneck to consultant for Native American tribes and organizations. Stuart not only teaches environmentalism, but practices what he teaches at his own small organic vegetable farm in Jefferson County, Kansas. Please help me welcome Stu Schafer.
Thanks, Manny. Thanks to the organizers. And thanks to all you wonderful people out here for coming out today. I'm happy to be with you. Manny said I'm a farmer and a professor. I teach sustainable agriculture. My farm is 30 acres in the beautiful rolling glacial hills of northeast Kansas. I use agroecology and diversified farming methods to raise chickens and 3 acres of vegetables and fruits. The rest of the farm is kept natural. Manage the woodlands and the grasslands to maintain ecological services, as the ecologists like to call it. I like to call it life. Pollinators, turkeys, deer, coyotes, the whole family is there. So it's a little piece of the natural world that we're all trying to preserve and protect. I'm proud to be a peasant. Like other peasants worldwide, my goal is to build the ecological health of the soil and the land and leave it as a healthier and more vital living place when I move on. And in the process, to provide healthy, organic, tasty, fresh food for my family and for the people in my community. Agroecology sequesters carbon in the soil. That's our goal. The real secret, if there is one, to growing food naturally is to put the carbon back in the soil where we need it. So we're taking carbon out of the atmosphere and putting as much of it back into the living soil as we can. And that carbon feeds the microorganisms and the plants feed the animals, and the plants and animals feed us, and it's one big circle. And that's what we need to build and preserve, not to be pouring poisons into the earth and destroying the life that brought us here. At the same time, like everybody else, farmers have to adapt to climate change. It's not easy. It seems like every year gets crazier. We have spring in February, summer in March, winter in April. We don't know what to do sometimes. We don't know what to expect. And this has all been predicted by the science. Climate science has let us know that the volatility of the weather patterns are going to increase, and they're increasing. We're seeing more and more extremes like this weather that we're having now. Rainfall patterns swing from extreme drought to extremely wet years within a year. We have dry seasons, we have dry months followed by extremely wet months. This is what we experience out on the farm. We see it happening. This is real, folks. This is not a theory. This is the reality we're living in. So we have to adapt to that. We do what we can, and while we're doing it, we're trying to do our part to mitigate some of the effects of past and current mistakes that unenlightened people are doing. So in general, the days and nights are getting hotter. The seasons are getting more fluctuating. We don't know when frost is going to hit. We don't know if we're going to have a frost. We don't seem to have winters anymore. The trees and plants are just as confused as we are. The trees bloom when, it seems like they should, and then they get hit by frost. So it's very difficult. Farming is very risky. I know some of our counterparts in other parts of the state have been experiencing even more difficulty with the weather patterns, the droughts, the wildfires that just struck in south central Kansas, terrible, killing rangeland and crops and housing farmsteads. So we've been a little more fortunate in this part of the state, but we're still having to adapt. Last week I was in Joplin. I just got a text from my daughter who lives down there. They're having floods today. They're getting flooded by this same weather system. They're getting 4 to 8 inches of snow in western Kansas, and Colorado is having blizzard conditions. When I was in Joplin, I drove through the parts of town that had been hit by that massive tornado a few years. Tornadoes, increasing severity of tornadoes and storms are part of this pattern. It's eerie. There's a swath about a mile wide right through the heart of Joplin where there aren't any old trees or old buildings left. They're rebuilding, but you can just see exactly where that tornado just devastated everything. A few years ago, I was in New Orleans. Well, a few years after Katrina, I was in New Orleans. Same kind of story. The devastation of lives there, just impossible to fathom. My parents and my grandparents lived through the Dust Bowl days in Kansas. We don't want to face that ecological disaster again, but I fear that we should be prepared. Those kinds of things can happen. But fear and depression are reasonable responses, but that's not what we're about. We can't succumb to fear and depression. In the face of difficult times and an uncertain future, too many people have turned toward demagogues and false prophets who tell them to reject reason and what they can see with their own eyes. But this is not the time to panic or bury our heads in the sand. Today, we are joined together from here to Washington, D.C., from north to south, from sea to shining sea. We're here together to say we don't reject the science, we embrace it, to show us what we're doing wrong and what we can do better. We don't betray our spiritual, religious, and ethical traditions that tell us to love and care for one another and the lands we live on and love. We don't reject the beautiful diversity among us and among the species of the planet. We embrace and defend it as our source of strength and resilience. So let's go forward from today and take this spirit and solidarity into the world every day. Nurture it and grow it until we turn back this civilization's race into madness and destruction and remake the world into the beautiful, abundant place it desperately wants to be. Thank you.